Hi guys, it's Jess from Honest Fiction and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing a very interesting August wrap-up. Alright guys, so August was rough. It was bad, honestly, there's no other way to put it. I read 7 books in August, and one of those books was like a soft DNF. So I don't even know if you can really count that. So technically, I guess I read 6 books in August, which honestly, I'm not trying to like downplay that. It's just I normally average, or at one point, I used to average around 15 books a month. So to read less than half of that is, it's kind of depressing on my part. Now, I did enjoy a lot of the books I read in August, and technically I'm filming this a week into September, and one of these books I just finished yesterday, but we're gonna throw it in, so at least it feels like I read a few books in August. But yeah, I kind of touched upon this in my September video. I do have a lot going on with work right now. I have my main kind of job, which is like scheduling. A lot of you know I left education. I've been doing like scheduling, stuff like that. I also do a lot of freelance work when it comes to like making graphics, editing, and like things of that nature. And that freelance kind of job has 2 big accounts kind of happening simultaneously, and it has been eating up so much more of my time than I kind of thought it would. So that is why my videos have been like super sporadic. All of this is probably going to end around October. So once October hits, I should be posting videos twice a week. No issues in scheduling. But yeah, there's also a lot happening in September. I'm going to be traveling and yeah, all good stuff. Anyway, all that aside, I read 6.5 books in August, and we are going to talk about them in this wrap-up. So I will give you a spoiler-free plot synopsis of every book and then my overall thoughts. And yeah, if you're unfamiliar with my channel, I post new videos every Wednesday and Sunday. If you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. You can also hit that notification bell to be notified whenever I post new bookish content. You can also check out my Instagram, Goodreads, and Patreon, all linked down below. With all that out of the way, let's talk about these books I read in August. Alright, so first up we have Direbound by Sable Sorensen. This is an adult fantasy romance that a lot of people compare to Fourth Wing, and I completely agree with that comparison. This is very much Fourth Wing, but instead of dragons, we have direwolves. Now, I did end up giving this either 4 or 4.5 stars. I'm still kind of undecided, and I really enjoyed this. I think it is totally worth the hype. If you're unfamiliar with the plot, we are following Marin. Now, Marin never wanted to be a bonded, which are these warriors that have magically bonded to direwolves. However, her sister ends up being kidnapped and no one is willing to come and help Marin find her, so she decides to enlist in like this army in order to hopefully find her sister like behind enemy lines. Now, unfortunately for Marin, the year she decides to enlist happens to be the year of the bonding trials. So she's going to have to compete in these bonding trials, and reluctantly, if she reaches the top, she might be forced to then be bonded with a direwolf and be able to kind of have like the mind speak ability and a lot of things very similar to Fourth Wing, which is why I'm kind of having a little bit of difficulty rating this. There were so many similarities, and I'm not talking just like the normal similarities that happen in Romantasy, like mind-to-mind speak and things like that. I do understand those are like very popular in a lot of different Romantasy books, but there were just certain instances in this where I was like, ooh, so similar. I also will point out, this book is much more violent than I thought going in. I feel like I heard a lot of people give reviews on this, and although I completely agree with like 90% of the reviews, I didn't hear a lot of people discussing how violent this book is. I did not mind it. Like, I watch a lot of action movies, like gore and stuff doesn't really bother me. However, if you are sensitive to that, know that going in. Definitely check the trigger warnings. There's a couple scenes in this that I was like, oh, very descriptive and on page. So know that, but overall, I did really enjoy this. I will 100% be reading the second book, and I think I might enjoy the second book just a little bit more. The ending of this completely caught me by surprise. There were a couple things that were a little bit predictable, but overall, I did not see all of the twists coming, so I definitely think this is worth a read. And next up, we officially kicked off our Legacy series read-along with Reign of Shadows and Endings. Now, I have talked about this book in almost every YouTube video I've made in the last 2 years, so we are going to skip the plot synopsis for this. Just know, dark fantasy romance, kind of has an urban fantasy feel to it, plays around with the captor-captive vibe. Yes, I do believe you should read the Lady of Darkness series before jumping into this. However, you absolutely do not have to. Melissa K. Roehrich has even posted on her website, you can read this as a standalone without reading the other series. I just think it's a better reading experience if you do. Now, with all of that out of the way, 6 stars on my reread. I actually liked this even more on my reread than the first time I read it. I feel like I was kind of dissecting the characters a little bit more, kind of knowing what was coming this time around. But I also really want to point out, this entire book is the miscommunication trope. And if you're familiar with my channel, you know I hate miscommunication. I absolutely loathe it. I don't know why it does not bug me in this book. I am totally okay with it, but there is a ton of miscommunication. So also know that going in. I kind of realized that as I've been talking to people as we're all buddy reading this. Yeah, this entire book is just a book about miscommunication. But also, it is such an amazing, amazing start to a series. I also really want to touch on the fact that Melissa K. Roehrich, I don't know if you guys can hear her, but they just started mowing the lawn outside my window. So we're going to push through. Anyway, Melissa K. Roehrich does such an amazing job writing, I feel like, depression and just a depressed character. And I know that's kind of a more somber topic to point out, but there were so many times in this where I was just reading about Tessa, and the way she was described is just feeling so hopeless and just almost shut down, and I feel like it was very good representation. So I just want to applaud Melissa K. Roehrich for that. I don't think I picked up on that as much my first time around while reading this, but I feel like this does have very good mental health rep. And just the characters overall, how they start in the beginning of the series to how they are by the time you get to the 3rd book, it's just such a drastic change, and it felt so fun just to see my little baby characters of how they are when they're first introduced in this series. And if you can't tell, I love this series. It is one of my favorite series of all time, and I'm having the best time reading it with my friends and just seeing their reactions as they're reading, and some of them are loving it just as much as I did, and it makes me so happy. So anyway, if you've been considering reading this series, please join us. We are reading the 2nd book in September, and I really need to start that. Some of my patrons have already caught up to the series, which honestly, these books are thick, so that is impressive. But I love this series with all my heart. Dark fantasy romance, epic characters, amazing romance. So please pick this up if you haven't yet. And next up, we have Silvercloak by L.K. Stephen. Now, I legit finished this book last night around 10 p.m., so I do not have an official rating for this. I still have to kind of gather my thoughts. The writing in this reminded me a lot of V.E. Schwab, and while there were parts I really enjoyed, it was much darker than I was expecting, and it had that wizard feel without feeling like a certain boy wizard in that whole academy. This felt so unique, but it really had some pacing issues, and I am not a character-driven reader. However, I needed more from the characters in this, and I feel like that is why I really am struggling with a rating. But if you're unfamiliar with the story, in this world, magic runs on pain and pleasure, so you have to have either a lot of pain or a lot of pleasure in order to produce magic or strong magic. So, just for context. Anyway, we're following our main character, Saffron, and Saffron is haunted by the deaths of her parents when she was very young. She saw them murdered by this gang called the Blood Moons. So Saffron is determined to get revenge. So she ends up joining the Silvercloak Academy in the hopes to learn magic in order to eventually take down these Blood Moons. Well, a secret Saffron has been kind of keeping comes out, and she is supposed to be kicked out of the Silvercloak Academy, but instead the highest up in this academy says, hey, instead of kind of outing you and kicking you out, we're going to send you undercover to the Blood Moons in the hopes you're going to be able to take them down. Now, this is Saffron's dream, so she is like, bet, let's do it. And when she gets there, she immediately realizes things are not quite what they seem, and she starts to have a bit of a connection with the son of the kingpin, like the leader of this gang that she's determined to take down. And the story really progresses from there. And once again, parts of this I really enjoyed. I love the magic, and honestly, I wish we got a little bit more of the academy setting. That is really where this book kind of shined for me. I liked learning about the different types of magic and how they work, and that is also not something that I typically really enjoy. I normally kind of shy away from the academy books where there's a lot of like in class, but I wanted more for this. I found the magic system really interesting. Once again though, the characters, the side characters, I already forget their names. I finished the book yesterday. They just didn't stand out enough for me, and I feel like that also has a lot to do with the fact I've been reading such amazing fantasy romances that have such stellar like cast of characters that are all really defined. In this, not so much. The main character by the end, like I was totally in her corner, understood her motivations, so she definitely grew on me. There's a certain character in here I absolutely love and I don't think you're supposed to love, which might be a me thing, but I absolutely love them. And overall, I did enjoy this. Pacing, there were definitely times where I was struggling, mostly in the middle. The end really, really picks up, and the beginning didn't feel too info dumpy. So it's really just that middle chunk I was struggling with. So overall, as I've kind of like talked myself into a rating, I would say 4 stars, maybe 3.75. I will definitely be continuing. Also want to throw out, this is also very dark, very violent. Check the trigger warnings. All right, and this next book is a somewhat new release. We have Arcana Academy by Elise Kova. Now, I want to preface with, the issues I have with this book, I don't think a lot of people are going to find the same issues with it. I just don't think I am a huge fan of this author's writing. I have rated other books by her in the past, like 4 stars, but even then, I've really had difficulty connecting with her characters. Now, unlike Silvercloak, which I just talked about, I wanted those characters to be a little bit more fleshed out, only because I saw the potential in those characters, and I just would have loved more. Like, I wanted to learn more about them. With this book, I could not care about any single character, and I was trying. I really felt no connection, and I feel like that is a similar kind of issue I've had with other books by Elise Kova. Because honestly, the world and the magic in this were so well done. Like, the tarot card magic, it's such a cool magic system, and I was fascinated with that and other like world building aspects of this. But when it came to the characters, I did not care. So that is my biggest issue. I think I rated this 3 stars. I honestly might drop it down to a 2.75 because thinking back to this book, I remember like a lot of the plot, but also I remember that feeling of being like, am I almost done with this? How much longer? Like, I was looking down at that audiobook so often. So overall, I am not a fan of this. However, if the plot I'm about to kind of tell sounds good to you, I would still give this a shot. So if you're unfamiliar with this story, it is a dark academia fantasy romance. We are following Clara, and Clara lives in this world where she is able to get by using a forbidden form of magic. Well, that ends up landing her in prison. So she ends up being visited by this prince who's also like the headmaster of this academy, and he needs Clara's help. He wants to use her magic in order to get or make a certain type of tarot card, which is very hard to make/discover. So she reluctantly agrees, but then he throws on that she is going to have to go to this school, pretend to be a student, and also pretend to be engaged to him. So it has a little bit of that like fake dating feel to it. And it really goes from there. So we're following this girl as she's attending these classes, learning more about tarot card magic. Also, a lot about like the history of this world and the magic and things like that. The romance really doesn't start picking up until like more than halfway into this book, I felt like, and it kind of felt a little bit disjointed. And once again, didn't love really any of the characters. The ending of this book did really save it. I did find the ending enjoyable compared to like a lot of the earlier parts of the book. Will I be continuing? Probably not. At least I'm going to wait for some of my friends to read the second book to see if it's worth picking up. But yeah, so overall, I didn't love this, but it might work for you. And next up, we have In the veins of The Drowning, I have messed up that title in so many other videos. I really, really want to leave out that second the. But anyway, this is a dark gothic siren romantasy, the first book in a duet, I believe a duet or a series. And I just discovered this is actually a debut, which is so, so impressive. The writing in this is so, or just like the prose are so, so beautiful, but also very easy to understand. I feel like sometimes with like whimsical prose, I can have a hard time really like deciphering what's going on unless I'm immersive reading. But for this, beautiful, creepy, eerie gothic, but also very accessible, and I appreciate that. But anyway, if you're unfamiliar with the story, we are following Imogen, and Imogen is living in a kingdom that hunts her kind. She possesses siren abilities, and she has been hiding them. That is until a king from a neighboring kingdom ends up coming to visit and discovers her secret. Well, after a upsetting event, they decide they are going to use each other in the hopes of kind of sharing a end goal. I'm not exactly sure how to describe this without it being a spoiler. But anyway, they decide they're going to work together for a certain goal. And that is going to force them to travel across these very dangerous seas that are filled with zombie sirens. How cool is that? So they are going to face danger, and while they're being chased by a bunch of different characters, and there's also a budding romance. And I just really, really loved this book. So also shout out to Lachlan from Locke's Library. I actually started this book, but ended up putting it down for Direbound. And I was going to move on because in the first like few pages, I wasn't sure how I felt. But after seeing her raving about this, I decided to give it another try and read the rest of the book in one sitting and absolutely loved it. So thank you so much. Once again, I will have her channel linked down below. We read a lot of similar books. So if you enjoy my channel, you will definitely enjoy her channel, except she's much more like aesthetic and does more vlogging, and check her out. But anyway, I love this and cannot wait for the second book to release. And next up, we have a dark, dark romance, Insatiable by Leigh Rivers. Now, I feel like this is best to go into somewhat blind, but in the story, we are following Cade. Now, Cade has been consumed by his obsession with Stacy Rhodes, the girl that broke his heart and pulled him into the darkness. Now free of the underworld, he is determined to find Stacy and get her back, no matter the cost. And it's their romance. And it is depraved and awesome and dark, and I could not put this book down. So I totally understand, once again, why this book was so popular earlier this year. Now, the second book has since come out via audio. I read this book all the way in like the first week of August. So I definitely want to get to the second book very soon. But I normally don't love second chance, and this might be my favorite second chance romance. It is so, so messy, but also addicting. And also, check trigger warnings, very dark series. Now, if you've read this, can you let me know, should I wait until the third book releases before reading the second book? Because I feel like if it ends like this first book where there's like a cliffhanger in the second, I might just want to wait. But also, I really want to get back into this world with these characters. So let me know down in the comments. But overall, highly, highly recommend, and definitely check out the audiobook. And I saved my DNF for the very end. Now, I will say this is a soft DNF. I am 100% going to go back and finish this, hopefully in September. Now, the reason being, one, I just want to say I finished this book because this book is unhinged. And two, I am trying to buddy read this with a friend, and we've already failed at one buddy read, so I am determined to finish this with her. The book is Kiss of the Basilisk, and if you've watched previous videos, you know I was so excited to finally read this book, and I went in knowing that this was essentially 600 pages of snake smut, even knowing that. And I was bragging about it, like I was talking to my friend Becky about this book, and I was like, I know what it is going in, it's gonna be great. I made it to chapter 19 and was like, I can't take any more. I cannot take any more snake spice. And it's wild snake spice. Like it is unhinged. If you're unfamiliar with the plot of this, we are following this girl named Temperance, who in order to not claim the king, but in order to be chosen by the king as like a wife and lover, she has to learn the art of seduction from a basilisk. And the basilisk that is chosen for her ends up being like the king of the basilisks think his name's Caspian, something similar to that. Anyway, as she's learning the art of seduction, she realizes that she's really into this Basilisk, like a lot. But she also has like some feelings for the king and finds out things about him. And I did like certain parts of this. Like I thought kind of like the game show type-ish aspect with like the different women vying for the prince. I thought all of that was interesting. I couldn't take any more steak spice. Like it was too much. So when I am feeling like a super spicy read, I might go back and finish this, or I might vlog just restarting this and reading it just for fun. At the moment, I have so many other books on my TBR that are higher priority, and I also feel like that's why I was struggling with this. I just knew I had other books I really needed to read, and I knew this wasn't going to be a 5-star. Still enjoyable, still fun, just I feel like it needed a little bit more plot. Alright guys, those were all the books I read in August. I also forgot to mention I did reread Sunrise on the Reaping with my husband while we were driving to Virginia on vacation. So technically, I read 7.5 books, not 6.5. I don't know if that makes it any better. It makes me feel a little bit better. But anyway, highly recommend Sunrise on the Reaping. Best book in the Hunger Games series by far. Oh my gosh, have tissues ready. But anyway, those are all the books I read. Please let me know down in the comments below if you have read any of the books I mentioned or if you have any recs for me. And I'd like to say a big thank you to my Paladin protectors, Amanda, Christy, Kat, Lada, Leslie, and Nerdy. Thank you guys so much for supporting my channel. And I said this already, I post new videos every Wednesday and Sunday. And if you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. I will see you all next week. Bye.